Italian Football Podcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Italian Football Podcast. I'm Carlo Garganese. Last night, Sunday, Italy, of course, were humiliated 4-1 at home to Norway, our biggest ever competitive defeat at home in our history, our biggest ever World Cup defeat, and only the second biggest losing margin ever in any competition in history, the biggest being the 4-0 defeat to Spain at Euro 2012 when we talk about competitive games, that is. So it was a historic defeat. This is a team that is in complete crisis. I don't want to repeat what Nimmer said in his post-match reaction on Sunday evening. So I would definitely check that out. It was an excellent podcast from Nimmer where he really summed up the situation well on everything that is wrong with La Nazionale and with Italian football as a whole. But there are a few things that I would like to say. This won't be a massively long video, but let's see how we get on. Once I start talking, I'll probably start complaining a lot. But I want to break down a few of my thoughts. First of all, I just want to latch on to the historic point, because this is historically bad Italy. We can't move away from that. The scoreline is historically bad, as I've just explained. The biggest Italy home defeat in a competitive game in history. Our recent World Cup record is historically bad. Two World Cups in a row we've not qualified, and we're at serious risk of a third World Cup failure. And if you remove the anomaly of Euro 2020, and that was an anomaly, it was an outlier, as amazing as it was and as great as that team was, and they went on a long unbeaten run and they deserved to win that tournament. You could argue that no major footballing nation in history is as bad as the past generation's Italy. Certainly when it comes to the World Cup. I mean, if I give you a list here, Brazil have never failed to qualify for the World Cup. Argentina have only failed to qualify once in 1970. Germany have never failed to qualify. They only missed out when they didn't enter, or when they were banned due to the country being occupied after the Second World War. France failed to qualify in 1990 and in 1994, but they then won it in 1998. Spain and England both failed to qualify in 74 and 78. Holland failed to qualify in 82 and in 86. And those are probably the nations I would call the real major footballing nations. But if Italy failed to qualify for a third straight World Cup, that is a historic failure. No other major nation compares to this failure. 3 straight World Cups in a row. So, this potentially can be historic in modern times in comparison to the other major nations. So that is where we're at. If we look at the manager, we can argue that Rino Gattuso is on paper. I mean, historically, where does he rank in terms of qualifications for the Italy national team job? Again. And if we look at the players or the players available to us, 2/3 of Serie A is foreign. There's whole Serie A teams that don't have a single Italian in their team. Sometimes, 1 or 2 Italians in their team. So it's historically bad in terms of the players or the opportunities for Italian players, or a pathway for Italian youngsters. It's historically bad. And when things are historically bad, there should be historic changes. And, Nimmer touched upon this a little bit last night, but Gabriele Gravina is the president of the FIGC. He should tender his resignation now, today. I mean, he's overseen one World Cup qualification failure, the debacle of Euro 2024. And, he should have gone then. We should have gone long ago. But, his departure is long overdue, but his departure is not enough. All the key figures in Italian football, in the FIGC, in the Lega Serie A, all the key stakeholders, in my opinion, things won't change until they all go. The people calling the shots, they should all go. This won't happen because, this is Italian culture. We all understand what Italian culture is like, what Italian football is like, the way that society works in Italy. The dinosaurs and the raccomandati in charge of these kind of institutions, like the Italian football institution, they wish to preserve their power, their pockets, so they close ranks. And, maybe one person will be thrown to the wolves. That may even be President Gravina. It usually is the manager, like it was Spalletti, but the same rotten, incompetent system remains when somebody is thrown to the wolves or when the manager is sacked. And, I always make the comparison. It's like when a country's failing, and right now, most countries are failing. Most countries are in, economic turmoil. People are struggling. People are suffering. Their businesses are failing. They're struggling to pay the bills. Everybody's unhappy with the leaders. There's been many of these times in history, or it's most of the time, to be honest with you. But right now, it's really bad, and the people are desperately unhappy. So what happens? Well, the president, at some point, the president or the prime minister will resign, or they'll be forced to resign, or they're impeached, or whatever, and then somebody else will come in. There'll be a new president, or there'll be a new prime minister, and that new person will be just as bad. Nothing will change. The people will still be in the same situation that they are in. And then what will happen? They'll call for the new person to go, or and the new person, a new person will be thrown to the wolves. Someone else will come in, and then the cycle will just keep repeating itself, and nothing will change because the system hasn't changed. The same system, will remain. Italian football is in that cycle. It's stuck in that cycle right now. The system is completely rotten. And regardless of, whether there's a change in manager or even a change in president, who was the clown that we had before Gravina, Tavecchio, that made all those racist comments, Opti Poba or whoever it was. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't matter who the new manager is or who the new figurehead is, whether it's the president or whoever, the head of the Lega Serie A. Nothing changes because the whole system is completely rotten. And there needs to be, for there to be any meaningful change, there needs to be a massive purge of the leadership. Italian football needs a complete reset. It needs to reset like Germany reset after Euro 2000. And that Germany team, I remember it. It was a bad Germany team. They went out in the first round. That was a Germany team that was still qualifying. And it was a Germany team who won Euro 96 4 years earlier. So it was a Germany team that had only really been in crisis, relative crisis, for 4 years. The national team, that is. But they recognized that the system was outdated. It was rotten. The people running German football were incompetent. And they ripped it up. And they completely, they started from scratch. They realized their mistakes and what needed changing. And Germany built another great nation again. And they built a dominant Germany team that eventually, won the World Cup. And that is what Italian football needs. It needs a great reset. to quote the WEF. There, I mean, it needs to completely reset. It really does. But unfortunately, again, as I said, this is Italian culture, Italian society. This is Italian football. Italians aren't like Germans, and I can't see there being any meaningful change. Because if we've not changed after 2 straight World Cup failures, then we're not going to change. What's another World Cup failure amongst friends, eh? So I mean, the same, the same people will remain in charge. Whether there's another change in manager, or if Gravina finally goes, the same system will remain. The same incompetent morons who sue a FIFA YouTuber or who go to war against piracy when it's quite clear what the real problems are that are holding back Italian football, then nothing changes. So you've got to keep that in mind. We can sit here and be desperately sad, as I am, because I love the Italy national team. It's the one thing that still gives me a buzz. I've lost a bit of my love for club football, which people know who listen to the pod. I still get that buzz with the national team. And I'm desperately sad. And we can sit here, and I'm going to now come on to it. We can talk about, we don't have the players and we don't have this and that, but it's the system at the end of the day. And while this system is in place, there's no hope. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to put it to be as depressing as that, but it's the truth. And we've been saying that, me and them, I've been talking about this for 5 years. And here we are. We've been doing this pod for over 5 years now, and we've been saying this. People, our long-time listeners, will attest to that. We've been saying this for 5 years, and here we are on the brink of possibly failing to qualify for a 3rd World Cup. So that's the bigger issue. But I mean, yeah, we can look at the other things. We can look at the manager. Should Gattuso be sacked right now? Well, Gattuso being the Italy manager is symptomatic of the problems of the system. He shouldn't be in charge of the Italy national team. He's someone that's completely unqualified. But putting that aside, I don't see, we've got to look at the now as well. I don't see, after a 4-1 home loss to Norway, a historic defeat, how the players can have any confidence in him. I can't. I don't see how it's a terrible situation to be in ahead of the playoffs. It's in some ways it's kind of lose-lose, because you sack Gattuso and you're adding to the chaos. Sacking a second coach in the number of months and going into a playoff with a new manager, their first game is going to be the playoff semi-final. It's terrible. But you keep Gattuso and you have an unqualified manager coming off a 4-1 thrashing at home. What do you do? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I mean, do I think Gattuso should be sacked? Yes. But I'm looking at, well, who are we going to bring in? Is going to add to the chaos. So honestly, I don't know. Toss a coin. I do not know what to do. This is the hopeless situation that we find ourselves in. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Maybe the players, I want to say the senators of the team come together, but the senators, as I'll come on to a bit, they're the ones that almost fading the most right now. So yeah, I don't know. Gattuso, who I think he'll be there. If Gattuso, will go into the playoffs not knowing what his formation is. I mean, can you believe that? We're going to go into the playoffs not having a clue what formation to play. What is our formation? Gattuso has chopped and changed way too much, as Spalletti also did. And now we have complete confusion. Can anyone sit here and tell me what formation Gattuso should use? I have no idea myself what we should use. The 3-5-2 has been an unmitigated disaster. The last 3 times we've used it, Gattuso's used it twice. We've let in 7 goals. Spalletti used it versus Norway in the game that consigned him to getting sacked. And we lost 3-0, and it was a total disaster in that. It was horrific at Euro 2024 when Spalletti tried it then in the Switzerland game. I mean, how the hell can we use a 3-5-2 on the back of a 4-1 thrashing, using a 3-5-2 and on the back of it being a disaster in these other games? Even though I keep hearing everyone say, yeah, but our players are the most suited to the 3-5-2. But we've been a disaster every time we've used it. We have a manager who doesn't know how to use it. Spalletti didn't know how to use it. You can't use a formation that the manager doesn't know. So we get rid of the 3-5-2. Well, what formation do we use? A winger system doesn't suit us because we don't have any good wingers. They're all average. you know. So, you know, and probably our two strikers, our two centre forwards have been actually, you know, been one of the positives recently is that our strikers, our number nines have looked, you know, quite dangerous, albeit against, you know, terrible opposition. But, you know, so we can't use a winger system. So that rules out the 4-3-3 and the 4-2-3-1. Well, we can't use a 3-5-2. We can't use a winger system. So what formation do we use? Like, what do we use? I mean, maybe 4-4-2 is the best to use. Maybe. But seriously, I have no idea. We've not tested that against a good team, against a strong team, or stronger team than the teams we've beaten in the group and who will play in the playoffs. So I don't know. Gattuso has no idea. The players have no idea. I have no idea. The fans, I mean, I have no idea. Sorry, I don't know what formation we will use, what we should use. So what hope? Yeah, so I don't know. And we're not a team because, I mean, look, it's impossible to build a team when you don't know what formation you is. But the bottom line is that we are not a team. Mentally, we're so weak. You know, like Gattuso said, as soon as they had their first shot, Norway, at the start of the second half, we collapsed mentally. We cannot react to adversity, this group of players at all. I mean, we saw that under Spalletti as well. We thought that Gattuso would bring that kind of, you know, at least that side of things. But okay, maybe, you know, we showed it a little bit in the, I don't even want to count those games against the smaller teams, but against Norway, against a stronger team, the first sign of adversity, and conceding a shot is not adversity, but yeah, the first shot we conceded, we folded like a pack of cards, and yeah, I mean, it's mentally we are weak, and we can't suffer. Good teams in football, top teams, know how to suffer, and there's going to be times all the time in games, even if you're the best team, even if you're prime Saki's Milan or Guardiola's Barcelona, all the best teams will always have some stage in the game where they will have to soak up a bit of pressure. The other team will have a bit of territory. The other team will be putting in crosses where, you know, that's football. This team cannot suffer. You know, as soon as the opposition puts us under any pressure at all, as soon as there is any kind of heat in the game, whether it comes from the crowd, whether it comes from a delicate situation where, you know, the game is on the line, this team, they can't handle it. You know, and even in the Norway game, which in truth didn't really have anything running on it in terms of result, you know, we were arguing with the referee all the time, including Gattuso. So I've criticised Gattuso. You know, when they argued about, admittedly, it was a ridiculous free kick, terrible decision by the referee where Esposito was ahead of his defender. The defender fouled him, and somehow they gave the free kick to the defender when Esposito was in. I mean, it's a terrible decision. Gattuso starts arguing, he gets a yellow card. You know, that rubs off on the play. So I blame Gattuso there as well. But the players arguing, the senators of the team, so it's Barella arguing all the time. Bastoni arguing, laughing at the referee. I mean, they might be right, but you can't do that. You know, these are supposed to be the examples to set. You know, we're not there mentally. We're not a cohesive unit. Again, all good teams are solid. They're cohesive. They play as a unit or as units and departments and partnerships over the pitch. So that the defensive unit is solid together. The two centre-backs are play as a partnership. You know, the midfielders play as a partnerships. You have partnerships all over the field. The departments are close together. That second half, massive gaps between each department, between the defence and the midfield, between the midfield and the attack, stretched out all over the pitch. The wide wing backs too far away from the central players within each department. That's been a big problem throughout Gattuso's reigns, including during Spalletti. It's been the biggest problem of the 3-5-2, actually, the massive gaps between each department. But you can't build a team if you have these massive gaps and if you're not a cohesive unit. And we're just not solid. Our defense is a joke. It's a joke. We don't have a defense. We have no unit, no defensive unit at all. So, you know, it's very, very difficult. And that's before you look at the individuals. You know, we come on to the individuals now. there are a few players in this Italy squad or in this Italy team who are not up to the Italy level. And there are some players who should not be playing for Italy again. Giovanni Di Lorenzo, he's finished, completely finished. How much longer can we watch him get destroyed, game after game for Italy? You know, I don't care if we don't have any right backs. He's costing us at least a goal a game. He's done. He needs to retire. Just focus on his club career. He cannot play for Italy again, ever again. Gianluca Mancini, he may be playing well for Roma, which is also probably a reflection on the decline of Serie A. He's not Italy level. He's a liability. He's completely unhinged. He's not good enough at this level. And, you know, if he wants to play with Haaland's arse, just don't do it on the football pitch, or don't do that in the Italy shirt. Okay, no more Mancini for Italy. And Brian Cristante is 2025. I mean, are we really still on the Brian Cristante train in 2025? Again, I know we are not in the best situation when it comes to centre midfielders. We're in a bit of a centre midfield crisis, but recycling the same substandard players in a failing team isn't going to suddenly make us good. You know, and Gattuso keeps recycling the same players who failed under Spalletti. Well, it's not going to change anything. You know, it's the definition of insanity, literally. Yeah, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, playing Mancini, playing Cristante, playing Di Lorenzo, the same players who are failing time and time again. What do you expect to happen? Yes, I don't care if there isn't we haven't got many good right backs. If we don't have many good centre midfielders, just give someone else a chance to fail, you know? And, you know, and then there's, you know, so those three for me should never play again for Italy. Then there are players who simply aren't at the level required to make this a win in Italy team, who we're probably better off replacing and just giving younger players a chance to fail. So, you know, Politano, he's 32. He has 3 goals in his last 55 games for Napoli. What are we expecting to get from him? The numbers are there right in your face. You know, Scamacca, 1 goal in 22 games for Italy. When do we just admit defeat with this guy? Especially when he's not fit right now. Why the hell is he getting called off when he's not fit? If Scamacca doesn't have at least 2 or 3 months game time, and even then he was fading, then just forget about it with him. But yeah, I guess also it's a sign of kind of the options. But, you know, which players do I want to come in? I mean, it's impossible to do a whole squad, as I don't even know what the formation should be. So it's impossible for me to pick a squad around the formation when I don't even know what the formation should be. But I think we should try and build around the 3 big strikers who are doing well. So Keane, Retegui, and Esposito are scoring goals. Spinazzola, I think we have to bring him back as he can beat his man, and we just don't have any of those kind of players. So when he's fit, bring him back. Chiesa, I'd bring him back, use him as a sub to try and have some kind of impact on the break. Again, it's a bit of a desperate move, but, you know, he's been doing it pretty decently for Liverpool this season as an impact sub. So yeah, I'd bring him back. We need a new right back. Anyone but Di Lorenzo. I mean, Bellanova didn't really impress me against Moldova, but I'd rather him than Di Lorenzo. But I think Kayode deserves a chance. He's doing well in the Premier League. He'll be better than Di Lorenzo. Just basically anyone but Di Lorenzo. Di Lorenzo, just anyone but Di Lorenzo. Honestly, anyone. Yeah, and then there's our senators. We need more from our senators. We need more from our supposed star players. There's 2 in particular I have to single out. Alessandro Bastoni, we need more from him, from Italy. You know, he's not done enough for Italy. He hasn't. At Euro 2020, he was a backup. You know, he played just 1 game, it's a dead rubber versus Wales in the groups. At Euro 2024, he was okay. Obviously, didn't go to the World Cup, the last World Cup. He's been poor in this qualifying campaign when it matters. And I've said it again, you know, we don't know what formation. He's unproven in a back 4. He lacks the basics of defending. You know, he's an amazing passer, one of the best in the world at distributing the ball. And you can utilise that, obviously, in the back three. But with Bastoni, I don't see him commanding and organising the defence, suffering when a team has to defend its box. The fundamentals of defending, I don't see that with Bastoni. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I'm saying what I expect from our centre-backs, what I expect from Bastoni, who's supposed to be one of the leaders of the team, who's played in 2 Champions League finals, who's done amazing for Inter. He's not doing enough. He's not doing well for Italy. And then there's Barella for both Italy and Inter, I should say. This guy has been, wildly up and down ever since Antonio Conte left Inter in 2021. After the Euros that summer, this guy's often been exhausted. We've seen so many games where he's really been non-existent. And we've often asked on this pod, is he already burnt out in his 20s? This guy does not perform anywhere close enough to the levels that you expect from a supposed top-class player. Bastoni and Barella should be our 2 outfield stars, really. And then we're not getting enough from them. I'm sorry, we're not. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe are we overrating some of our players? I don't know. Maybe we are. Maybe we are overrating them. We're certainly overrating them for Italy. That's for sure. Because when we look at our team, we say, oh yeah, we've got Bastoni, he's world class, and we've got Barella, he's world class. Well, they're not world class for Italy. They're not even close. They're ordinary players for Italy. So I don't know. Maybe we need to look at ourselves a bit more in that sense. Maybe we need to accept that our players that we think are good are not as good as they are. I don't know. I mean, it's probably a bit of everything, but yeah, we do. We need to look at ourselves. Yes, as a part of the bigger picture, we aren't producing certain types of players. That's clear. We're not producing wide attackers. We're not producing players who can dribble, that can beat their man, that can create and score goals out of nothing, the kind of fantasy attackers that we used to produce in abundance. We just don't produce these players at all at the moment for a long time. And that's a problem. That'll be a problem in the playoffs when we play against small teams that are going to sit back. It's difficult to break teams down when you don't have players like these kind of players. They're the players that break down those teams. They're the players that score goals and decide matches. We aren't producing defenders also, as going back to the Bastoni point, we aren't producing defenders who can actually do the basics of defending. We're producing defenders who are great on the ball, like Bastoni, like Calafiori, even Di Lorenzo to an extent. Di Lorenzo's throughout his career, he's been always much better going, in terms of going the other way. Di Marco, amazing going forward. Di Marco was good. Di Marco was one of the few players I would say from this Norway 4-1. Di Marco, amazing on the ball. But these are players that the fundamentals, they lack those real fundamentals that we associate with the great Italian defenders. They don't have those fundamentals. They have some amazing attributes elsewhere. But with these players in our team, we concede goals because they lack the fundamentals. And so, I mean, that's an issue. And even the one that you think does have fundamentals has really fallen away. Buongiorno does have those fundamentals, at least, kind of mentally, he's stylistically has it, but he's not performing well. And, centre midfield, we have a crisis at centre midfield. We have no depth at all behind Barella and Tonali. The players that I don't trust any of the players that come in. Someone like Locatelli is a bit of a flake, isn't he? Locatelli. And we have no depth full stop in this team. So as soon as 1 or 2 players are out in certain areas, we're effed. So yeah, I mean, we're individually, yes, we do have some issues. But as I said, as a team, sometimes you can overcome those issues because even if you look at, okay, Norway's attack is amazing, but if you compare the players on paper that Italy have in defence and midfield, even the midfield, compared to Norway. I don't know how many, I don't mean to be a prem face here, but I don't know how many of the Norway defenders and midfielders would get in the Italy team. But seriously, but they play as a team. They're a team. They're a unit. So we can do better if we can become a team despite these individual weaknesses. As for the playoff draw, that's on Thursday. Nima will do more of an in-depth preview on that on Tuesday about the draw. But yeah, I mean the semis, we already know who our semi opponents can be. It will be either Sweden, Romania, Northern Ireland, or one of North Macedonia or Wales. And that depends on the outcome of that game that's on Tuesday evening. So it's going to be one of those 5 teams. In the final, the possible teams we could play are Kosovo, Ireland, Albania, Czech Republic, plus those 4 are definitely a potential opponent, plus probably at this moment one of Slovakia, Bosnia, Scotland, or again Wales or North Macedonia. Probably. But if Belgium, Germany, Austria, Denmark, one or more of those don't win their groups, then it's possible that the final opponents could be much tougher, as it would mean basically like the seedings, because we're going to be seeded, that the 4 seeds could change. And it could end up meaning, like, for example, if Germany comes second, Germany will go into the playoffs and be in the seedings, the pot of seeds along with us, which will mean that the teams that were going to be seeded before, like for example, like a Ukraine or a Poland, could potentially then become a potential final opponent. If that makes sense. It'll be clear on Tuesday after the game's going. But basically, the list of final opponents could get tougher or will get tougher if Belgium, Germany, Austria, or Denmark, if one or more of those don't win their group, then the potential final opponent gets tougher. But listen, regardless of who we face in the semis or the final, if we get there, I have to be honest. I'm really sorry that we have to keep doing these depressing pods, but we just have to be honest here. This is the situation. We're in a historic crisis. I'm not going to sit here and be all positive and try and pretend things are good. I'm sorry, I'm not. If we start with, like when Italy won the Euros in 2021, me and Nima were here doing amazing, positive, celebratory podcasts all the time, and we were riding the crest of the wave. So if Italy were doing well, promise you we wouldn't be negative. I know sometimes we come across as always moaning, always being negative, but this is the situation we're in. This is historically bad for Italy. So I'm not going to sit here and polish the turd. I'm sorry, I'm not. I have to be honest. Regardless of who we face, I'm not confident we're going to qualify for the World Cup. In fact, right now, I will be surprised. I will be more surprised if we qualify than if we fail to qualify. That's where I am right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say, I want to play this opponent. I want to avoid Sweden because I've got Isak and Gyökeres. Well, no, I'm not going to say that because that will be arrogant towards, the North Macedonia that we lost to 4 years ago, or Wales, or Romania, or Northern Ireland. That would be really arrogant. So I'm not going to sit here and say I want this team or I want to avoid this team, because honestly, I think that any team that plays as a team can beat us, because we're not a team. Any team that's just kind of well drilled, well organized, doesn't give anything away cheap, has a kind of a system, can get themselves up the pitch and force some set pieces or some corners, or just put some balls in the box, put us under pressure a little bit, get in our faces a bit. If they're playing at home, I just don't trust us, Italy. I can't confidently predict us to win against anybody, unless it's like Nima said. Nima said the only exception would be if it's a Gibraltar or a San Marino or Andorra. They're the only teams that I can say, yes, I'm confident that we'll win. Anyone above that really bottom rung of teams, I can't say I trust us. I think the only thing I would say, the only thing I am begging for in this playoff is that we play at home. That's the only thing I would say. We're at home because I don't think we can have. I mean, there's a certain pressure playing at home as well, for sure. But I don't think we can. This team mentally can handle playing in front of a really hot crowd, regardless of who it is. You know, even if it's one of the really weak teams, I'm not going to name them because it'll end up people will dig this out and even against one. We all know who the weaker teams are. Even in front of one of the weaker teams we can possibly meet, I don't trust us mentally to be able to handle it. So yeah, I don't want to sit here and say I want to play this team or that team in the draw. I would just say I hope we're at home for the final, that is. But that's being presumptuous as well. That's presuming that we're going to win our semi-final, which is at home. So yeah. I tell you what I do hope. I just hope that when we get to the playoffs, we don't have any injuries. We have our full strength team. Everybody's fit. And I mean, it would have been nice if we could have had a match day postponed, but we know that won't happen. I just want everyone to be fit, and then we go with our full strength team because of the lack of depth. I don't want us to go into those games with some second string players because they're not good enough. We don't have the depth. So that's all I would say. I hope that the draw, we get a home game for the final, and then when we get to those playoffs, that our players are in as good form as possible and are fit. That's it. That's all I'm asking for, and then we see what happens. I don't want to look any further ahead than that. I can sit here and say, even if we get to the World Cup, we're not going to do anything. I mean, I think that's obvious, but I just hope that let's just hope that we can just somehow get there. That's that. I said it would be a short pod. I've ended up doing 37, 38 minutes. Sorry if that was really depressing, but I just wanted to get out a few thoughts let's just hope for better times. Nima, as I said, will be here on Tuesday evening. He's going to do a little reaction pod, basically telling us, previewing the playoff draw, as we'll know who the teams that we can possibly face will be. And then on Thursday, I'm going to be doing a reaction to the draw, and that will come out at around about, I think, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon CET. So watch out for that. I'm gonna do an instant reaction pod to the draw, and we'll talk a little bit about our opponent or potential opponents then. Okay, thank you everyone for listening. Have a lovely week. Ciao, ciao.